Hey, this is Yazuki Wolf, and today I'd like to do a sort of talk about my general process in making an illustration, a digital illustration. So today I'm going to be using mostly Clip Studio Pro, but you could also use Photoshop, and I'll probably use Photoshop as well in the final steps here. But in general, I just want to go through the basic process that I went through to make this illustration for Arcatype, which is a new original board game, card game that my company is coming up with in August. They'll be debuting in America at Gen Con Indianapolis, so anyone who's interested, you could click on a link I'll put in the description to check out the Facebook page. But basically this card is part of the God deck, and it's a card that that slows down the characters. So first thing I did is, this is the first step is the rough phase, and in this phase I basically just most important thing is get an idea in your head and just collect as many references as you can. So I just went on the internet and just took a whole bunch of pictures that I thought I could combine together in some interesting way. And it's important not to just take one picture and just copy that, but to take numerous pictures and try to incorporate different elements into them. And if you have time, doing studies of different taking some time to do a studied illustration of some of these aspects one by one is also good, but if you don't have time, then maybe just look at them and then put them together. But so here we are. I got this idea of sort of the blind justice woman. I forgot exactly what she's called, but how she's holding these scales, but I thought instead of scales I could have her holding a clock. What is this called? A sand dial. There you go. Is it sand dial? But anyways, this sand clock. And I sketched this out here, and then I had another idea over here that I sketched out as well. I find that it's generally best to have more than one rough, because especially for me, since I work in a company where I have to show my work to a supervisor who's going to pick one or the other to go with. If you just show them one picture, they're usually going to be kind of I don't know, they kind of are confused. They're kind of unsure about what they want to do, and they might say, oh, can you try something different or this or that. But usually I found that if you give them two or more options, usually it's a lot faster process, because they could say oh, I like number 2, or I like number 1, or they might say I like the pose in number 2, but I want this aspect of number 1 to put in there. So I try to usually put at least 2, if possible, maybe even 3 or 4 different rough illustrations for each card, to kind of give them options about which way they'd like to go. And so yeah, just like this, probably for people who draw a lot, maybe you could kind of see what I'm doing here, because you guys kind of see the outline, really rough sketch lines and stuff. But when you're showing it to a client or to your boss at work or whatever, this is probably a little too rough. At least in my experience, I found it's a little too rough. So I like to just go on a layer underneath this. And now these aren't particularly cleaned up lines or anything. They're just the first lines that I drew, the very rough lines. But I take a layer underneath that, and I put some color. So here you can see that I put the background color here, just to sort of get an idea of what the general tone of the piece is going to be. And then in clipping layers above that, and once again, this is in Clip Studio Pro, but I'm sure you can do clipping layers in Photoshop and many other programs as well. So this isn't necessarily specific to this particular program. But okay, so then I make a bunch of clipping layers on top of it to kind of add the different layers of color. So here's a little more detailed background, and then I added the color for the main character. And here I just checked perspective and things like that a little bit too, but it's not too important at this phase. It's just important that they could kind of see so this is what the picture is going to look like. If you zoom out a little bit, it looks like it could even be a finished picture. But say you zoom in and you can see that there's a lot of rough things that just aren't really worked out. So it's not finished, but it's good enough to be able to give people the idea of what the finished picture is. And even if you're just working alone, I think it's good for yourself just to be okay, so now I know what I'm aiming for.